Hello friends, my name is Brazel, as you probably already know. As you can tell, my games are gone. And unfortunately, I just didn't really see a point in keeping these all, keeping all these games anymore. So I decided to sell them. Sold them for a tidy profit of $6,378. With that money, I've gone ahead and invested in a numerous amount of small stocks, and I have quite a nice little portfolio now. So with this channel moving forward, we're not going to really focus on games that much anymore. We're going to focus more on smart investments and, just growing yourself for the future and grooming yourself for retirement. And I really... thought I sold you. You won't have me! You won't have me, Link to the Past! I must remain responsible! I must not spend money on games anymore! I can't do it! I gotta play! The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is frequently listed at the top of people's best SNES games, or even best games of all time lists, and with good reason. It's fantastic. It's one of those games that just feels special, even after playing it for the 100th time. I got my first copy of Link to the Past with my Super Nintendo during Christmas of '92. The copy I own now was purchased because, again, a Zelda game was so popular in my household that we wore out the save battery very early on. My first experience with the game was at my neighbor's house, who had a Super Nintendo before I did. I didn't get to play the game, but I was enthralled by the update in graphics and music. When I finally got my SNES later that year, along with Zelda, I made the N64 kid look like a Buddhist monk. I'm not kidding. A Link to the Past officially takes place before the original Legend of Zelda, but honestly, I never really cared. I just saw it as an alternate adventure featuring the same characters. If you let the game sit at the title screen after that awesome intro, you'll get a good amount of backstory. Long ago, Ganon was sealed in the Dark World by 7 wise men, but now the evil wizard Aghanim is trying to break the seal to free Ganon by kidnapping descendants of the 7 wise men. One of those descendants is Princess Zelda. One night, Zelda telepathically contacts Link and his uncle for help. Link dashes off after his uncle into the stormy night, and when he sees his uncle has already fallen, takes up sword and shield to save Zelda on his own. Link then collects the 3 pendants of power, courage, and wisdom to unleash the Master Sword from its slumber deep in the Lost Woods. Zelda gets kidnapped by Aghanim's soldiers, and Link is too late to rescue her. He is sent to the Dark World where Ganon is sealed and sets off to save the 7 descendants who are sealed in crystals to break into Ganon's tower and defeat Aghanim once and for all. The story is pretty basic by today's standards, but the extra twists were really cool back in the early 90s. I still don't understand the name A Link to the Past, other than maybe to drive the point home that this is supposed to be a prequel. I know Nintendo of America wouldn't have wanted the word gods in the title of the US release due to their policies against religious references, so the Japanese title Triforce of the Gods wouldn't cut it. Link to the Past has graphics that still look pretty darn good today. The sprites and backgrounds are all colorful and vibrant without making the game look cartoony or childish. I used air quotes on childish. You can't see that. The Mode 7 map looks cool, and I used it often growing up. I never use it now because I know the game so well, but it's still fun to look at. The coolest part about the graphics in A Link to the Past is the way Nintendo made Hyrule look completely lush and green, while the Dark World looks dead and decayed. Though you can still tell they're complete mirror images of each other. Well, not necessarily mirror images because they don't flip, but you know what I mean. The only real nitpick I have is that Nintendo just chose to flip Link's sideways facing sprite instead of creating a different one. This is pretty common early in games, so at the time I didn't really care. I remember either Nintendo Power or the official player's guide using the excuse that Link carried his shield to always face Death Mountain to repel the evil air that flowed down. Yeah, I knew even as a kid that that was a load of bull. The music was the first thing that I really took notice of when I first saw Link to the Past. It creates an atmosphere that I just hadn't experienced before. The entire soundtrack sounded like it was being played by an orchestra at the time, compared to the NES. You just didn't get better sound quality than this in a console game. The overworld theme made you feel like you really were on an adventure, and the dungeon themes were creepy and kind of foreboding, foretelling that big monster that was just around the corner. The Dark World theme made you realize you were in a much more dangerous land than when you were traveling in Hyrule. I can't get away from mentioning the sound effects, mostly because they all sound so awesome to me. Honestly, when I think of sound effects from video games, like lifting objects or dashing at full speed, sound effects from A Link to the Past are what I immediately think of. A Link to the Past looks great, but the gameplay is only so-so. April Fools. The gameplay is wondrous. Yes, wondrous. I use that word all the time. The top-down view throws back to the original formula from the first Zelda game on the NES, but now, Link moves in 8 directions and his sword slashes in an arc rather than a simple stab. All your old favorite items from the original game are here, plus a ton of new ones that are a lot of fun to play with. The series' staple hook shot got its start here. Link can grapple onto distant objects and pull himself to them. He can also use the hook shot to stun enemies and grab items at a distance, much like the boomerang. The dungeons are all laid out great for the most part. Each dungeon brings its own unique puzzles and challenges. The Ice Palace was always particularly difficult for me. I used to get the Cane of Samaria in Misery Mire, level 6, before taking on the Ice Palace, level 5. Particularly because of one puzzle that I was too dumb to figure out until I got older. Honestly, the game isn't as open as the original Legend of Zelda, but you can still hit all the major dungeons in Dark World out of order. Well, not all of them, but some of them. For example, I usually hit level 4 or Thieves Town after level 1, so I can get the Titan's Mitt and upgrade my Master Sword at a blacksmith before taking on any other levels. And then the aforementioned level 6 then level 5 that I used to do, and I don't really do anymore. You still pretty much have to tackle most of the levels in order, due to item restrictions that limit your travel, but it's not too tied down like it is in later games. There were 3 things I noticed for the first time in this playthrough, mostly because I sat down and took my time rather than just trying to finish it as quickly as I can like I usually do. The first one is that Link's hands change color depending on which glove upgrade you have. Gray for the power gloves and gold for Titan's Mitt. I seriously cannot believe I didn't notice this until now. I've been playing through this game several times a year for the last 13 years, and I never noticed this. Also, there's this cave in the Dark World swamp. I don't think I've ever visited this cave. Maybe I did whenever I first played through it, but honestly, I've never seen this little guy before. The cave itself is largely unnecessary, so there's really no reason to visit it, but hey, that's really weird that I've never seen it before. Finally, you can smash pots with the hammer. I can't even. I don't even know how I missed this. So, yeah, that made going through pots a lot faster, where I usually used to just lift them and throw them. A Link to the Past is an iconic part of video game history, and you should play it. I don't care what kind of gamer you are, you should be required to play this game. It's very easy to come across, and you don't need to pick a physical copy up on the SNES. You can get it on the Wii or Wii U Virtual Console. You can also find it for the Game Boy Advance, and it's usually a little bit cheaper than picking up the physical copy for the Super Nintendo. And it's just as good. I know there are a ton of videos about this game online, but I just really wanted to talk about it because I love it so much.
That's all of them. I'll never give them up again.